Hello and welcome to OPA GC Sociology. So for today's lesson, the title is What is a Questionnaire? And you'll do now, first off, just 5 questions in 5 minutes. So you've got 5 questions there just to answer. So outline 2 examples of probability sampling. What is patriarchy? What is the organic analogy? What is a capitalist superstructure? And just to describe Murray's idea, so Charles Murray's idea of the underclass. And then as a stretch and challenge, what is this idea of validity? So just pause the video for 5 minutes and then I'll go through the answers. Right, so for number 1, 2 examples of probability sampling. Remember, this is really the sampling that goes hand in hand with quantitative or positivist methods. So you've got random sampling, you've got systematic sampling and stratified sampling. So they're just different ways in which you can pick from your sampling frame, your list of names. So you might randomly pick, you might have a system, so maybe every other person, or you might have stratified where you're considering the classifications. And then patriarchy, so that's simply a male-dominated society. The organic analogy is a functionalist concept, so it's when structures work together in society. And then for number 4, capitalist superstructures, so it's kind of the opposite of the organic analogy. It's actually a Marxist concept, and it's when structures reinforce class inequality within society. And then finally, Murray's idea of the underclass. So if we remember, it's below the working class. They're seen as deviant or criminal, welfare dependent, often from dysfunctional families. And then just as a stretch and challenge, validity. So that's just the idea of having lots of detail in your research to try and understand that social world. So very much an interpretivist approach to research. Right, so just for task 1, I just want you to write down what a questionnaire is and why we use them. So simply a questionnaire is a written list of predetermined questions that a sociologist wishes to put to a group. So we already know what the questions are. So just some considerations to be made when completing or creating a questionnaire. So generally you're looking for a large number of respondents. Might be a variety of locations. Face-to-face contact isn't needed. If your data needs to be quantifiable, so if you want to really present it in terms of numbers, if you want easy questions to answer, no real interpretation, just very clear. So if you're looking for these things, then that suggests a questionnaire is perfect for you. So you want a large sample, you want a lot of structure there, you want clear correlations. So that kind of answers the stretch and challenge. It's associated with a quantitative approach. What should you consider when using a questionnaire? So these are a few things you should consider. Is this the appropriate research tool for the topic? So it may be a case that no, actually a quantitative approach isn't the most appropriate. Maybe you need something that is a bit more unstructured, or something that doesn't require a big sample. Maybe you've got more time to do it. Okay, you should also make it very clear to the participants' intentions of the questionnaire. Okay, that comes into the ethics about consent, so they know what you're doing, you're not misleading them. You need to be careful about the wording of your question, so it's not open to interpretation. Remember, questionnaires is all against that. They're about it being very clear. You can't be offensive during the questioning. That's a given, no harm. The wording of questions, again, to avoid that interpretation and misleading people, the wording should be short and to the point. There are occasions where the questions do need to be explained, or a word or a concept needs to be explained, so everyone has the same understanding of it, but that's very rare. It should be really stating the obvious, very clear for you to answer. And as we've gone over in the past, you're probably going to do a peer review or a pilot study just before you do the big one, or maybe both. So in a questionnaire, you really have two styles of questions. You have open questions and closed questions. And you can just see in red here, two examples. So I'd like you to get the definitions and the examples down. So an open question is really a question that invites the participant to provide extended responses. So you might initially ask something like we've got in the example here. What do you think of this lesson? You're then going to explain in a bit more detail what you think about it. So let's say you think, oh, this lesson's rubbish. You're going to explain why you think that lesson's rubbish. Or if you think it's good, you're going to say why you think it's good. So that's more of an interpretivist qualitative approach. You're trying to get depth there and validity. But if you're really going straight for the structured and sort of numerical positivist response, you're going to have a closed question. So it's only allowing a restricted amount of responses. So it might be multiple choice or just a one-word answer for you to respond to. So we've got one here. So what did you think of this lesson? Good, bad. So it makes it very clear. It's easy to measure. It's numerical, but it's not really getting validity. It's not really going into the depths of why. So this would be, if you're using an open question, it's very good for validity. If you're using a closed question, it's probably best for reliability and maybe even being representative because it's so quick to do. You could do many of them. Okay, and then finally, these are just some of the advantages and disadvantages of using a questionnaire. Okay, so I'd like you obviously to note these down, just a few of them. So some of the positives, it's cost effective. Instead of hiring all these people to do your research, you're just printing it out and sending it out in the post maybe, or doing it over the phone. It's easier to access respondents. Now that's partly because it's a bit more welcoming. It's a bit more easy to do, but partly because it's just so quick. You can get quite a few respondents. People don't want to be held up and have their time wasted. So they don't want to spend hours doing a piece of research. They want to do something that's going to take 5 minutes tops. And it's more reliable because it's something that's easily repeatable. Okay, we saw that especially at the closed questions. And because of that, it's more representative. It's easy to get a massive sample. And as it says, easily quantifiable, easy to put into data, especially those closed questions. Okay, but what's bad about it is it's limited by or has no fresh insights whatsoever when there is closed questions. Okay, if it's just yes or no, you will never know the underlying reasons why. So let's go back to that question with whether you enjoyed the lesson or not. If you said yes, then you want to know why your lesson went well. You won't have the opportunity to do that because it'll be a closed question. Also, pre-coded data can be quite biased, so depending on how the person set up the coding. There's also sort of limited checks to see if someone's telling the truth or not. Because generally speaking, there might be 50 closed questions, and it's just going to take quite a long time if you're doing that. And also, if you do have a low response rate, so let's say you only get 100 out of your 10,000, that's not necessarily representative, and it might distort the true picture of the research, that social world you're trying to study. So finally, we've got just two examples really of questionnaires that you might want to go and look at. So there's Mike Savage's The Great British Class Survey. It was really ambitious study of class that's not really been done before. They actually used a mixed method approach, so triangulation. They used a questionnaire, and then I think they used interviews, if I remember. And another example, a similar time frame, I think it was a little bit before, it's called Reading the Riots by Tim Newman, and that also had a triangulation. It had a questionnaire initially, and then interviews about what they think caused the London riots in 2011. So feel free to go and research those. They're really two fantastic examples of not only a mixed method approach, but also how a questionnaire can be really ambitious and effective.